I knew that there was this creative desire for me to like release great music. And one day I just kind of felt like, okay, yeah, you can release great music with other people, but why not try to release some music of your own as well?
So, not only are you an amazing musician, you've also done production work. And so, I know you don't like to talk about accolades or whatever, but you've been able to get some validation through awards.
Yeah.
So, what is it that you've actually won for production work?
So Mandisa, I think it was in 2014. She won. She won 2 Grammys. I don't remember what they were for in the moment, but I was one of many producers on that record, and so we all were credited as Grammy winners
How
on
did
that
that feel?
record. Oh, it was amazing.
Yeah.
Like I'm like, what in the world? I did 2 songs on that record,
Uh-huh.
so it was so cool to be a part of it. And then that same record won a Dove Award later that year. It was just yeah, crazy. I'm just still
Mm-hmm.
pitching myself that it happened. I'm grateful.
And so I'm assuming that the opportunity arose because of all the things you're talking about: professionalism,
Yeah,
your playing ability, your likability, that Mandisa says, hey, I want to give you an opportunity.
yeah, and being ready. Like I had already been grinding it out, learning how to produce with my other friends, just growing. Back in my research days back home, we get snowed in, and I got this little computer at the house. I'm learning how to run Fruity Loops, and then that goes to Digital Performer, and then I moved from that to Pro Tools when they're teaching us that at MTSU. Yeah, it was just that whole growth period, from there up until that moment. Literally, I got a call overnight that the producers, for the main producers for that record, were overloaded. They didn't have time to do 2 songs, and the label was like, "Hey, do you have time to produce these 2 songs for us?" I'm like, "Yeah," and literally, we banged those out in about a month and turned it in. That was in the summer, and then 6 months later, it's winning a Grammy. I'm like,
Hmm.
"What?"
Mm-hmm.
So cool.
So, had they heard your production work prior then?
Yeah, so I put myself out there with having meetings and all that, and I had a little bit of an inroad with some people through Mandisa, but basically, some of the people at the label, I just set up meetings like, "Hey, this is what I do," and I've just learned that since moving here, you have to be very relational, stay flexible, but also be relational. Set up meetings, get to know people because it really is about who you know. Um, like in the last hour, they called me just because they knew that I already had a relationship with me and Nisa, and you know they knew I could deliver.
Um, so production work, let's backtrack.
Yeah.
So we know how you started with music. How did you get into production work?
Uh, During my research years, uh, back home, while I was rewinding those tapes, I don't know when I realized this, but at some point I realized, oh, you can record, and if I get a second tape player, I can record what I'm playing with in a mixer over to the other tape,
I did that too.
and just keep, yeah. So that's literally where I started. It was just trial and error, and then one year my dad bought me a sequencer,
Mhm.
so I started messing with that. I don't remember what the name of it was, um, but that just kind of grew. And then in college is where I actually started, um, trying my hand at actual projects. I had a friend from Chattanooga. We worked on a record for her. Just started, she just let me work on her music and figure things out. And from there, we just kept going.
What helped develop your sound? I mean, I'm assuming obviously we've heard all about listening to music.
Yeah.
What do you think became your sound in a sense?
I feel like my sound, it changes a good bit. Like, honestly, I feel like I've been blessed with the ability to be a chameleon to a degree. And so I'm not really trying to force my sound on somebody as opposed to trying to figure out what it is that they want. So I'm always asking questions, and I can get better at that. But I'm always asking questions like, what is your, like, what are you shooting for? So I ask the artist, like, okay, who's in your iPod, or who's in your iPad, or what are you listening to?
You're
What's in
trying to
your
get
iPhone?
into their headspace.
Yeah, like, show me your Spotify playlist. Like, what are you listening to, and what do you want your record to sound like, or what do you want this song to sound like? Because that gives us a template for where we're headed. Um, so yeah, I just try to be flexible with that instead of pushing my sound on it. Now, obviously, my roots are gospel, um, and around like the high school time frame is when I personally connected with like the CCM and more Christian contemporary music. So I have that blend between that and then rock music as well. So that's all in the cards for me. But being in Nashville, you have to be flexible. So I think if you have the right team around you, you can pull off just about anything musically.
For somebody that's watching, what would you say if they're aspiring to do production work? What are some nuggets you'd be like, hey, make sure you do this, that?
Uh, I wish someone had told me when I was younger to find a good lyric person,
Mm,
because your music, you can have these cool arrangements and all this stuff happening, but if the lyrics suck, the song sucks.
mm, mm-hmm.
And it's just gonna be a cool groove that you guys ride to. But if you can get someone who can really get you some good lyrics, whether that's if you are that person, or if you're like building the team and you're getting more lyric people in, that would help big time. Just you know, it'll elevate what you're actually putting out musically. So I feel like it's all about your team. So having a good lyric person, but then also get other people that you like, fill your team with things that you don't do. So if you don't play guitar, make sure you have a few guitar players on tap, or a few drummers on tap, a few bass players, that help, shift your or elevate the sound of your team. Don't try to do it all yourself, even if you can. That being said, there is a beauty in being able to do some of the stuff yourself, because you can help, make more money, which that helps you sustain what you're doing. So, to a degree, it's helpful to know, like, okay, I can do a lot, but bring a team in as well, because I feel like there's beauty in, the collaboration with other musicians and other artists.
So we heard your dreams. We heard what you did as a young boy. Um, we heard how you got connected to the industry
Yeah.
through Nicole, and then obviously going into Mandisa. But now you find yourself a little bit in a different space, right? So now you're at a place where you're exploring your own artistry.
Yeah.
And so I know that a lot of that you wound up moving down to Florida for a few years and you were working at a church.
Yeah.
Can you maybe elaborate on that and
Yeah.
how that aspect of your life came to fruition and where it's going?
Yeah. So we were on the Casting Crowns tour, I think in 2015 or maybe 2014, somewhere in there. And we were just, I was backstage somewhere, and I just kept feeling the Lord tugging me, like, I need you to use your voice more. Use your voice more. I'm like, what? And so, long story short, I was used to teaching choir parts and singing in that setting, but not really being the front person. And so, um, and I just felt this tug also for leading worship, which is big in the Christian community. And so, I basically reached out to my pastors here and just let them know, like, hey, this is stirring in my heart. And they're like, well, you have to pursue it. Well, we didn't know what that meant. Um, Months later, some positions opened up. I started looking, and positions started to open up online, and so we checked out one that was in Florida, and they just needed help, and I needed an opportunity to grow, and yeah, it was a beautiful time down there in Florida. Obviously, the people were super sweet, super kind, but then we were so close to the beach and to Disney, so it was like living a honeymoon again
Uh-huh.
for my wife and I.
Mm-hmm.
It was a great time, but we were also able to grow, as leaders, leading a team, but also musically leading. So then when we moved back to Nashville, I wasn't really expecting uh, to step into like an artist role at all. Um, but I knew that there was this creative desire for me to like release great music. And one day I just kind of felt like, okay, yeah, you can release great music with other people, but why not try to release some music of your own as well? And so that started last year around this time when we worked on that last video together, you and I, and my wife. It's just been a continual build since then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Um, so you stepping out, it was a step of faith, you know,
yeah,
and I know that I think all artists deal with this to a certain extent, where you kind of question yourself and like self-doubt. Am I good enough?
oh yeah.
How did you overcome some of that?
Who said I have? Oh man, it's a daily fight, man.
Yeah.
Especially being here, in Nashville and growing up in Huntsville around such amazing singers. Um, yeah, it's hard at times to value what you do. Especially, I'm a producer. Like feel like I have a great ear, so I know when I hear amazing talent in someone else. It's hard to see that in yourself. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? But it's just being confident. Like, okay, I have something to offer. No, it's not this person's talent or that person's talent, but I'm not called to compare myself to them. I can gain inspiration from them, but I'm called to do what God's called me to do, whatever that is. And so I just have to release, my music and release who I am into the world.
And I think the funny thing is, because I deal with that too, just
Yeah,
in various ways. But the funny thing is, you think all of a sudden, like, I have this great idea.
yeah.
And then once you start doing it, you're like, I suck.
Yep.
So it helps, I guess, when you start sharing it, that's a whole nother story, because sometimes when you share, you don't get reciprocated back the same excitement. So
Yeah,
then you do start to question,
yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So, but what have you had ever since, like, Heaven's Perspective was the
Yeah.
first one you released? What have you received feedback that kind of helped you to overcome some of that?
Yeah, um, it's really been a lot. Well, the first layer was family because they support everything you do,
Hmm.
but they had the opportunity to not support it. But yeah, family was super supportive and shocked even. Like, wait, okay, we knew you played drums, we knew you did all this other stuff, but you sing too, and
Mm-hmm.
so that was encouraging. To hear that they were actually blessed by the music. But then that next layer of friends that were blessed by the music, and then they started sharing it with their friends, and just hearing like different testimonies from people, like, hey, this lyric blessed me, or this word from this song like really spoke to my heart, or whatever that looked like. That to me is encouraging because that's why I do it. It's just to bless people and to encourage people. I don't really do it to try to make a name for myself. Sure, I'd be lying if I said I don't want to, build an income or wealth from it. But like we do it because we love music, and we do Christian music in particular because we love God. And so for me, that was the reason why it was like, okay, so to hear that feedback that like this song actually did bless somebody, or this whatever like ministered to someone, those testimonies or those stories really help me to keep going, and it encourages me to keep getting in the writer's room and keep writing songs. So since last year, we released another song and did a live recording thanks to you, conversation on the phone. Like, bro, you need to do a live recording. So we did a live EP, and we have one more song, one more song to release from that. But yeah, it's coming together.
I feel like a common theme that keeps coming up in this conversation, and probably will come up in others, is doing something not just because of money,
Yeah,
not just because of quote unquote fame, whatever the heck fame is,
yeah,
but it's really like not forgetting who you are or who you feel you were created to be when you were a young kid,
yeah,
and enjoying it.
yeah. You got to do it because you love it. Like, the hard times will make you want to stop, but if you love it, you'll keep going. Like, even when you're sick of it, you'll keep going.
Hmm.
Yeah,